All right, let's dive right in. We're looking at the Pakistan Met Department's 2024 climate report, and let me tell you, it is packed with data.
It's really amazing work they do.
Absolutely. And thankfully, Climate Action Skills teamed up with a deep dive to break it all down. We're going to uncover some pretty surprising climate trends in Pakistan during 2024. Think record-breaking rainfall, unexpected cyclones, and some temperature swings that are going to make you wonder what seasonal even means anymore. Ready to get started?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Okay, so right off the bat, this report highlights that 2024 was the 7th wettest year for Pakistan in the last 64 years. That's a pretty big deal, right?
It is, yeah. It really shows how climate change is bringing us more frequent and intense weather events. And what's really interesting is how these events, they're impacting different regions within Pakistan, like uniquely.
You're absolutely right. And the report actually digs into those regional differences. It says that Sindh and Balochistan, they saw a massive increase in rainfall.
Huge.
We're talking a 94% increase for Sindh and an 82% jump for Balochistan. That's way above their average.
Yeah, way above.
So were there any specific months that really stood out? Like any record-breaking months in there?
Yeah, August was a pretty wet month, like across the whole country. It was actually the second wettest August on record for Pakistan overall. But for Balochistan, it was especially exceptional. It was their third wettest August ever recorded. And get this, they had a 266% increase in rainfall compared to the average.
266%.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, that must have a huge impact on the region.
It did, yeah. You know, the report talks about significant flooding, damage to infrastructure, disruptions to agriculture, and, especially in those regions with those extreme rainfall events. And, it really highlights how vulnerable certain regions are to these kind of shifting weather patterns.
Absolutely. Speaking of unusual weather, there was a cyclone that hit in August.
Yeah, that's right. Cyclone Asna formed in August, which is pretty rare for that time of year.
Yeah.
Only 3 other cyclones have been recorded in August in the North Indian Ocean, going all the way back to 1893.
Wow.
So almost unheard of.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And cyclones, I mean, we know they bring intense wind and rain. Did the report go into any detail about the impact of Cyclone Asna?
It did, yeah. So Asna formed in the Northeast Arabian Sea and brought heavy rain and strong winds across several regions. The report doesn't delve into specific damages, but it does really emphasize the unusual nature of a cyclone forming during what is typically considered, monsoon season.
Right. Okay, so we've got record rainfall.
Yeah.
We've got a rare cyclone in August. What about temperatures throughout the year? Did the report say anything about any unusual patterns with temperatures?
Yeah, definitely. This is where things get interesting, actually. So while the annual mean temperature for Pakistan was above average, when you look at specific regions and seasons, there are some dramatic variations. For instance, Punjab experienced its coldest January in 64 years.
Wow, that is a swing. What would cause such a cold snap in Punjab, especially when the overall annual temperature was higher?
Well, the report attributes Punjab's cold January to this persistent, dense fog that just blanketed the region.
Okay.
And it's a pretty stark contrast, to the record-breaking heat experienced in other areas, particularly during the monsoon season.
Right. Talk about some wild swings.
Yeah.
So you're saying some areas were shivering through record lows while others were baking under those record highs?
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, it really, points to this erratic nature of temperature fluctuations we saw in 2024.
Okay, so we've got record-breaking rainfall, rare cyclones, and some crazy temperature variations across Pakistan. What does all this tell us about, the country's overall climate trends?
Well, I think it paints a picture of a climate in transition. The big takeaway is that Pakistan's climate is experiencing these more frequent, intense weather events. And the impacts are really, they're varying across those different regions.
So understanding those regional differences is going to be key, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely have to dive deeper into that.
Yeah, we'll definitely explore that further as we continue. Welcome back.
So we've seen some truly remarkable events. I mean, record rainfall, a rare cyclone, those dramatic temperature swings.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm curious, what does all this mean for Pakistan, going forward? What can be done to adapt to these increasingly extreme weather events?
Right. That's the big question now, right? We need to shift from just kind of observing these events to actually understanding how Pakistan can adapt. How can they build resilience for the future?
Okay, yeah.
And I think a key area we have to focus on is strengthening infrastructure.
That makes sense, right? I mean, we saw how the heavy rainfall and flooding can really wreak havoc on roads, bridges, buildings, everything.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, investing in robust infrastructure that can withstand those extreme conditions. I mean, that's got to be a priority. Think about things like improved drainage systems to handle those really intense downpours,
Yeah.
and building codes that ensure that structures can resist, not just floods, but those strong winds too.
So essentially, we're talking about climate proofing our infrastructure.
In a way, yeah, we're going to have to rethink how we design and build. Absolutely.
Okay. But what about the impact on agriculture? I mean, Pakistan relies so heavily on farming. How can that sector adapt?
Right. Agriculture is it's the backbone of Pakistan's economy. But you're right, those traditional farming practices, they might not be sustainable anymore, with
Right.
these changing weather patterns.
Right.
We have to explore new solutions, more innovative solutions.
So are we talking about shifting to completely different types of crops or like farming techniques altogether?
It's possible, yeah. Promoting drought-resistant crops, improving irrigation techniques to conserve water, developing early warning systems for floods and droughts. That could really help farmers adapt. Imagine like a system where farmers they get these timely alerts about potential droughts. That way they can adjust their planting schedules, or implement water conservation measures.
That would be huge. I mean, giving them the information they need to actually
Yeah.
make informed decisions, protect their livelihood.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But thinking beyond agriculture for a second, I mean, water scarcity is already a major issue in Pakistan. How can we address that growing challenge, especially with droughts becoming more frequent?
Yeah, water resource management is critical. Investing in water storage infrastructure like dams and reservoirs, that's really crucial. But at the same time, we need to promote rainwater harvesting techniques. And we also got to improve those water allocation systems to, make sure there's a fair distribution of this precious resource.
Okay, so it's like a multi-pronged approach, storing more water, using it more efficiently, and making sure everyone has access. But even with all those measures, those extreme events, they're still going to happen. How do we prepare for that?
You're right, yeah. Even with the best adaptation strategies, you can't eliminate all the risks. So having those robust disaster preparedness and response systems, that's essential. Think well-trained emergency response teams, effective evacuation plans, and early warning systems that can alert communities to those impending threats.
Right, those systems are almost like a safety net, right?
Yeah, they are.
They help to minimize the damage when these things inevitably happen.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like Pakistan's got a long road ahead in terms of adapting to these climate changes. But it's good to know there are some concrete steps that can be taken.
There is, yeah. There's definitely hope. By investing in infrastructure, in agriculture, in water management, disaster preparedness, Pakistan can build a more resilient future, one that can withstand those increasing pressures from a changing climate.
While adapting to these changes that are already happening is important, we also need to think about how we mitigate future climate change.
Yeah.
Right? What steps can Pakistan take to reduce its contribution to the problem?
Absolutely, yeah. Mitigation goes hand in hand with adaptation. Transitioning to a low-carbon economy that's really crucial. It means investing in those renewable energy sources like solar and wind power, and reducing our reliance on those fossil fuels.
Okay. So basically, we're talking about finding cleaner ways to power our homes, our businesses, our industries.
Exactly.
What are the benefits of that kind of transition besides, just reducing those emissions?
Well, it's a win-win, really. Not only does it help curb climate change, but it also creates these new economic opportunities, and it improves air quality. Imagine Pakistan with cleaner air and a thriving green energy sector.
Now, that's a future worth striving for.
Yeah.
But can Pakistan achieve that kind of transition on its own, or does it need international support?
Climate change, it's a global challenge. It requires global cooperation.
Right.
Pakistan needs support, from the international community, whether that's financing, technology transfer, capacity building. For instance, developed countries, they have those advanced renewable energy technologies.
Right.
They could really help facilitate the transfer of those technologies to, developing nations like Pakistan.
So it's about sharing knowledge, resources, working together to find those solutions that benefit everyone. It's a reminder that we're all in this together.
Exactly. No single country can solve this alone. International collaboration is key to to mitigating climate change effectively.
Okay, so we've talked about adaptation, through infrastructure, agriculture, disaster preparedness. We've touched on the need to mitigate future climate change by transitioning to that low carbon economy. Um, I- are there any other crucial aspects we need to consider in this journey towards a more resilient Pakistan?
There is one crucial element that we really need to emphasize, and that's equity. As we develop these adaptation and mitigation strategies, we need to make sure they're inclusive and equitable. We can't leave anyone behind.
Right. Climate change, it often disproportionately impacts the most vulnerable communities.
Absolutely.
The ones who've contributed the least to the problem are often the ones who suffer the most.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's essential to prioritize the needs of those communities and make sure that they have access to those resources and support they need to thrive in a changing climate. This includes providing access to clean water, resilient housing, and sustainable livelihood opportunities.
So it's not just about like building these big infrastructure projects or adopting new technologies. It's about making sure that the benefits of these efforts actually reach everyone,
Yeah.
especially those most at risk.
You got it. Building a truly climate resilient future for Pakistan, it it requires a collective effort. It involves everyone. I mean, from policymakers and scientists to, you know, farmers, business leaders, and just everyday citizens. We all got to work together to create a more sustainable and equitable future.
It's a call to action for all of us to step up and contribute to building a better future for Pakistan.
Yeah.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening for me. It's highlighted the challenges,
Yeah.
but also the possibilities.
Absolutely. By working together, we can create a future where Pakistan not only withstands the impacts of climate change, but thrives in this new era of sustainable development.
That's a powerful vision
It is.
and one worth fighting for. But for now, we've reached the end of part 2 of our deep dive. The conversation's not over yet, though. There's still so much more to explore. So stay tuned for part 3, where we'll delve into some of the lesser-known consequences of these climate shifts. Exploring their ripple effects on society, on culture, even on politics. All right, welcome back to our deep dive into Pakistan's 2024 climate report. So we've explored all those dramatic weather events, and we've discussed, ways that Pakistan can adapt and even mitigate the impacts of climate change going forward. But I'm kind of curious about the bigger picture, like the ripple effects, that go beyond just the infrastructure, the economy. What are some of the lesser-known impacts of these climate shifts?
That's a really good question.
Wow.
We often get so focused on those immediate and those tangible impacts of climate change, but the reality is it really does touch almost every aspect of life, and sometimes in ways that we don't even expect. One area that's often overlooked is actually public health.
That makes sense. I mean, we talked about those extreme temperatures, and I can only imagine how that would affect people's health beyond just, feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, heat stroke is, an obvious immediate danger, but those rising temperatures, they also worsen, those existing health issues like respiratory problems, cardiovascular disease. There's even some emerging research that links extreme heat to mental health challenges.
Wow, that's something we don't often consider. Are there ways to address these health impacts? Like, what can be done?
Absolutely. We have to strengthen those public health systems so they can respond to these emerging challenges. And this includes implementing heat action plans to protect those vulnerable populations during heat waves, increasing access to healthcare facilities, and just raising public awareness about, those health risks.
Okay, so being prepared for those extreme events and making sure that people know how to stay safe. But you mentioned that climate change affects more than just our physical health, right? What about the social and cultural impacts? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Think about Pakistan's rich cultural heritage, right? I mean, many traditional agricultural festivals are closely tied to those specific weather patterns, and those patterns are becoming less predictable with climate change.
So, for instance, a festival that celebrates the monsoon season could be disrupted if, the rains are late or they're just not as intense as usual.
Exactly, yeah. And that can have this ripple effect, right? It impacts cultural identity, community cohesion, even tourism. It really highlights how climate change can disrupt those traditions, the ones that, connect people to their land and their history.
It's a reminder that climate change, it touches every part of our lives, even those deeply rooted cultural practices that that we often just take for granted. Are there other societal impacts that we should be thinking about? Yeah. Climate change can act as a threat multiplier. It can exacerbate existing social and political tensions as resources become scarcer, due to those droughts or those floods, competition for water and land. It can intensify and potentially lead to conflict.
So climate change isn't just an environmental issue. It really has the potential to create instability, conflict,
Yeah.
impact the very fabric of society.
Exactly, yeah. And it really highlights how important equitable resource management is. Strong governance, effective conflict resolution mechanisms. Those are all crucial to building a climate resilient society.
It's a complicated web of interconnected challenges for sure. And we can't forget about the potential for climate-induced migration either, right? Right. As certain regions become less habitable because of those extreme weather events, sea level rise, other climate impacts, people might be forced to relocate, and that could be within Pakistan or even across borders.
And that raises those important questions, like
Yeah.
how do we manage those migration flows? How do we ensure the well-being of the people who are displaced?
Exactly. Yeah. It requires some really comprehensive planning that takes into account things like urban planning, resource allocation, and social integration. In those destination areas, we have to be prepared to support those who are forced to leave their homes because of climate change.
This deep dive it's opened my eyes to those far-reaching consequences of climate change. I mean, we've gone way beyond just the headlines. We've explored how it impacts everything, from public health and those cultural traditions to social stability and even migration patterns.
And I think that that's the key takeaway here, right? It's understanding those broader consequences, those ripple effects. It's essential if we want to develop effective and sustainable solutions. We got to move beyond just those reactive measures and adopt a more proactive approach, one that really considers those long-term implications of climate change on every aspect of society.
There's a call to action for all of us to think beyond just our immediate surroundings and consider how interconnected all these challenges really are.
Yeah.
Climate change isn't just an environmental issue. It's a human issue. It's a societal issue. It's a global issue. And it demands our attention and our action.
We need to approach this challenge with a sense of urgency and a willingness to collaborate
Okay.
across disciplines and sectors. By working together, sharing that knowledge, and implementing those innovative solutions, we can create a future where Pakistan not only weathers the storms but thrives in the face of a changing climate.
This deep dive has been it's been an incredible journey. We've unpacked the Pakistan Met Department's 2024 climate report, and we've really explored those implications in depth. We've covered so much, from record rainfall and those rare cyclones to those hidden costs of climate change on public health, social dynamics, and even those cultural practices. But most importantly, I think we've explored those pathways to a more resilient and sustainable future for Pakistan.
We have, and as you move forward, just keep this information in mind. Think about how you can use this knowledge to become part of the solution, whether it's through your own personal choices, your engagement with your community, or advocating for policy changes. We all have a role to play in shaping a better future.
This deep dive is really just the beginning of a much larger conversation, one that we hope will continue to inspire action, innovation, and collaboration. Thank you for joining us on this journey.